Welcome to the last module in the Get Licensing Ready track, which helps you to prepare for the Software Asset Management Exam 70-713, which was released in April 2017. There are 5 modules in this track, which take you through all of the topics in the exam. Let's take a look at those now. Here are the modules, and you can see some percentages aligned with each module, which show the estimated amount of questions that there will be on each of these topics in the exam. Each module has a video to teach you the necessary topics if you're new to software asset management, and an exam to check that you've remembered the key points and can apply your knowledge to scenario-based and factual questions. Your preparation for the exam might consist of watching all of the videos and then trying out the questions, or just working through the exams to see if you have any areas of weakness. Of course, you can watch the associated videos at any time. So what is included in the exam? Well, the content of the first module is understanding what the SAM optimization model, or SOM, is, and how it's used to assess an organisation's SAM maturity. This is a good module to have first, since we refer back to SOM in all of the other modules. Module 2 is entitled Manage Software Licenses, and this takes you through the main activities of a SAM baseline review. So that's collecting inventory and license entitlement information and performing a reconciliation. Module 3 goes into depth in some of the areas around data collection, and we look at topics such as ensuring completeness of data and resolving inventory discrepancies, as well as managing SAM reporting requirements. Then Module 4 is about setting up a SAM program and making SAM part of the infrastructure of an organisation. At this point, we look at the importance of securing executive sponsorship and funding, and then how to design, implement and maintain a SAM program, as well as creating and maintaining a SAM program improvement plan. And finally, Module 5 is about managing the software asset lifecycle, and we'll look at managing request, acquisition, deployment and retirement processes, as well as how to track consumption and how to optimize assets. I think we should get started with that right now. Let's get going straight away with our first topic, which is managing the request and acquisition processes. We'll return to the SOM once again as we talk about the acquisition process, and we're concerned with what percentage of total software purchases in an organisation are made through or are controlled and tracked by centralised procurement. And we're looking at moving processes on from a basic level, where assets are purchased on a per project basis. You can see that the standardised level is about making software purchases through approved vendors. So here we know what software is going to be used in an organisation, and we've worked with the key vendors to work out the best way to buy the software. Perhaps an enterprise agreement suits the needs of the organisation best, and we're likely to have established a better price point. Improving on that at the rationalised level, software purchases are based on the deployment and entitlement reconciliation. So the organisation knows what it's got deployed and knows that it has licenses for the deployed software. But as ever, we're striving for the dynamic level ultimately, where processes are in place so that there is a predefined asset catalogue that all purchases are made from, and licenses are required based on metered usage, so that there is less waste in the organisation and we start to see some significant cost savings. As we turn to managing the deployment process, we can see that we're focused here on considering what percentage of total software deployed across the organisation's PCs and servers is installed through centralised sources or a controlled distribution environment. And at the basic level, there is no centralised IT, and software is deployed by end users in an ad hoc way. At the standardised level, processes are in place to ensure that only approved software is deployed. And by the rationalised level, processes are improved such that software deployment reports are available to stakeholders. And at the dynamic level, processes are in place for users so that they can request software through an authorised channel, where they perhaps provide a business justification for using the software with sign-off from their line manager as required. And it's possible to check in real time to see whether requests can be met via spare licenses from the license pool. Users can then download the software on demand, perhaps using System Center Configuration Manager, which we looked at in Module 2, where IT can enable users to self-provision applications through a company portal. As part of the software asset lifecycle, we need to track deployment and consumption, and there are a couple of other Microsoft tools that I'd like to talk about here. Microsoft Intune and Enterprise Mobility and Security, or EMS. Now, both tools aim to allow users to use the mobile devices of their choice, and that's whether they're Windows, Android, or iOS devices. And then for those users to be able to access corporate applications and data from those devices, while at the same time, IT can keep corporate information secure. Now, Intune has a collection of device management tools, and that helps with application deployment, and that means that organizations can push required applications to devices, or again enable a self-service company portal to allow users to install corporate applications themselves. It is a cloud service, but it has great integration with Config Manager, which means that IT have a consistent management experience across devices. And just a note on licensing here, Intune is licensed with a user subscription license. Customers assign a license to a user and can then manage devices for that user. Intune is also a component in other Microsoft suites, in fact, in EMS, which we'll look at next. So EMS is itself a collection of a number of tools. Intune is one, but there's just one other one that I want to look at in the context of consumption, and that's Cloud App Security. Cloud App Security tells you what cloud apps users in an organization are using, and thus it can be also used to track usage of cloud apps to see if you can reduce licensing requirements. For instance, if you find that users aren't using some of the services licensed by an Office 365 E3 license, then you may be able to reduce some licenses to Office 365 E1. From a licensing perspective, it's another user subscription license that organizations acquire to protect their users with these capabilities and all the other components of EMS. And as our last topic, let's turn our attention to managing the retirement process. Now, there is a SOM competency for this, where the key question is, what percentage of retired hardware assets are tracked in a way to enable the software on them to be reused? And if we look at the requirements for the different levels, we can see that at the basic level, software is retired with hardware and is not harvested or reassigned. Now, while licenses acquired through the OEM channel do live and die on the hardware, volume licensing licenses can generally be transferred, and at the standardized level, this is what is happening. Devices are wiped of all software, and the license is harvested and tracked in a centrally controlled inventory. At the rationalized level, these licenses are available for reuse, and as they are reallocated, both deployment and license records are updated. And finally, at the dynamic level, automated processes are in place with centralized control and tracking as licenses are harvested and reassigned. You can also see the word disposal there. Let's talk about that for a moment. If a device is to be disposed of, then the hardware inventory needs to be updated correctly so that the device shows as deleted rather than merely missing. If the disposal is being managed by a hardware disposal company, then they should provide a destruction certificate. And as we've already said, any relevant software licenses will go back into the license pool. But what if that device is not being destroyed, but perhaps being donated to a charity? Only the OEM licenses should be transferred with the device, and the organization should reinstall Windows with the original media, and then the computer, media, certificate of authenticity and manuals should be transferred to the charity. While we're on the subject of retirement and optimizing use of the licenses, let's touch on some related topics. The first is having a robust joiners, movers and leavers policy so that hardware and software assets are recovered when employees finish on a project or move to a different position that no longer requires them to have access to specific hardware and software. What about leavers too? Is their IT equipment being recovered when they leave the business? And these days, a license doesn't just allow you to locally install software, of course, but may give access to online services, and any harvesting policy should include these cloud services licenses. As people move project or leave the company, then those licenses should also be made available for reuse. There should also be processes for disposing of on-premises software. If a particular product should no longer be used in a business, then the software asset catalogue should be updated and the media destroyed. Additional processes involving informing users of a software title reaching disposal status may be implemented, and there may well be a requirement, of course, for setting up a training schedule if the replacement product is very different. And as we come to the end of our last module, let's review the topics that you need to know for the exam. You need to know how the requests and acquisition processes are managed, and we looked at the acquisition process competency in the SOM to consider to what extent software purchases are made through centralised procurement. This ranged from buying products on a per project basis at the basic level to purchasing products based on actual requirements according to metered usage at the dynamic level. Then we considered the deployment process and also looked at consumption. The deployment process competency in the SOM considers to what extent software on both PCs and servers is installed through centralized sources, again ranging from users doing what they like, when they like, to making approved software available to users when they need it. We looked at a couple of useful tools from a deployment and consumption perspective. Intune's device management, which helps to deploy and manage the right applications on mobile devices, and Cloud App Security within EMS to show the consumption of cloud services, for example. And finally, we looked at the retirement process and what needs to be considered from a license harvesting perspective as hardware is retired or donated to charity. And we also took the opportunity to look at ways of further optimizing assets with processes to reuse licenses as people join, move, or leave the organization. That concludes our last module in the 70-713 exam preparation track. Your next task should be to take the short test associated with this module to check that you've understood and remembered the key points and that you can apply your knowledge. So it's goodbye from me on this last module, and I'm left with just one final task: to wish you good luck when you take the 70-713 Software Asset Management exam.